Two crazy offenses about to take off with Kansas State and Indiana in a huge non-conference matchup. This could be something of maybe a tournament preview. We're going to knock it out with this Locked On College crossover.
You are Locked On College crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, the Locked On College crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Hoosiers. It's going to be a fun one for you today. Christian Rauh and Jacob Goins. Let's bring it down. Indiana, Kansas State. This is going to be a fun non-conference matchup. I think it might be the most difficult non-conference matchup for Kansas State all season long, and you're going into a very tough competition in Bloomington. It's a very crazy atmosphere. Jacob, let's get right to it. Before we do that, though, before I throw it over to you, probably should say that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers get $300 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins, so head to FanDuel now. Jacob, what do you think about this game overall as we get started here?
Yeah, I love it, man. It's exciting. I mean, the first time you and I have got together to do a crossover because our teams haven't met on football or basketball. And so it's a weird matchup, right? It's not one you would think of as like, oh my God, it's a crazy game. Everybody's tuning in, but they should, right? I think they absolutely should, because you mentioned it. These are two of the best offenses in the country right now. Two teams averaging 90 plus points a game. Sure, it's early in the season, right? But these two teams come together, and defense is solid, I think, for both teams, but not where either side wants it to be just yet. And so there could be some fireworks inside of Assembly Hall. And look, I know this isn't the Players Era or the Maui Invitational or some of the other Feast Week festivities, but this is a really solid P4 game, P5 game, if you want to talk about that in basketball terms. And the fact that for us, luckily, it's inside of Assembly Hall. I love Kansas State getting to come here. Hopefully some of your fans will travel and get to see one of the greatest venues in college basketball. And hopefully it's an exciting game, because I think either side can use this win, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, about using this as a resume builder, right? I want this to be a game, whoever wins, to look back in late February, early March and say, that was a win we can hang our hat on. That's a win we can use for the tournament committee, more so for Kansas State, with it being a true road game, because we know how the committee sees home games against P4 teams, P5 teams. They don't respect it as much, which it is what it is. But man, this is a really fun matchup. And I think Kansas State, you said it, probably their best opportunity in non-con play.
I agree completely. There's a couple other games later on in non-conference play, Creighton, but they're not looking as impressive as I thought they'd be. We're going to get to that, obviously, my viewers down the road. That happens in December. But I'm with you. I think Indiana is the truest test, and it might be the only ranked game until you get into Big 12 play for Kansas State. You guys just squeaked into the AP Top 25. You're 25th this week, and you mentioned it. This offense is absolutely crazy. For Kansas State, that's kind of an outlier, if you will. Over the last couple seasons, Jerome Tang has certainly focused on the defensive side. He brings in an assistant coach in Matthew Driscoll. He brings in a whole bunch of different talent in the transfer portal, and they focus really hard on that offense. And as you mentioned, now they're averaging over 90 points a game. A lot of changes happening in Indiana as well. What do you like about that offense most definitely over for the Hoosiers?
I mean, it's just completely different, dude. It's so different than what it was under Mike Woodson. That was the most boring offense in basketball I think I've ever seen. Like, it was terrible, dude. It was straight up 1985 NBA basketball where, oh, we got a big or two. Let's just dribble down the floor, bounce it down to them, maybe run a high ball screen and just let them go to work in the paint. Indiana under Mike Woodson, Christian, was one of the best, if not the best team in America in paint points. Points in the paint, Indiana dominated. Here's the problem. They couldn't shoot threes. They weren't getting to the foul line. When they did, they weren't making them, and they were one of the worst teams in the country at shooting and making three-pointers. And so when you got down by 8, 10, 12 points, you were done. Hands up. You had no way to come back, because when one team is making threes and the other team is making twos, that math doesn't add up all that well. And so that's the biggest difference from the Mike Woodson era to Darian Devries, who we'll talk more in specifics about in a moment. But the offense is just night and day, man. They get up and down the floor. They're looking for the open shot. They're looking for the better shot, and everybody's spreading the floor and is a threat to make a three. There's a couple of guys that won't shoot them a whole lot. Reed Bailey, Sam Alexis, the two bigs. You don't have to worry about that. But pretty much everybody else is a threat to shoot a three and make a three. And that's the biggest difference. And while the offense has been fun, the defense has been questionable at times. And I'm trying to figure out who in the heck's going to stop PJ Haggerty, because that dude for Kansas State is unbelievably good, as your people know.
I can't wait to talk more about PJ Haggerty, but I have to bring this up first because you just brought in a completely different mindset to me. Are we about to see a 3-point shootout in this one? Because Kansas State has the heading into this one, or at least they were for quite some time. It might have changed after the loss against Nebraska. They were leading the country in 3-point percentage.
Jeez.
So here, Nate Johnson, there's some PJ Haggerty obviously getting into that. We might be seeing a 3-point shootout in this game on Tuesday night.
It's very possible. I mean, in the first 3 games of the season, Indiana scored 98 points, 100 points, and 101 points. And one of those was against Marquette, who unfortunately isn't as good as I was hoping they were going to be. The offense has definitely cooled off the last 2 games. And I'm sure you talked about this, and I told my listeners too, like, those types of offensive performances aren't going to happen over a 35, 40 game season. It's just not possible to do that every single night. But all it takes is one. All it takes is for you to get hot. And the fact that Indiana's at home, we'll see how that impacts Kansas State being on the road. But we very well could just see a 3-point barrage, and maybe it's the first one to 120 wins on this game on Tuesday night inside of Assembly Hall, where I expect the crowd to be packed. I expect this to be a fun atmosphere, but it may just come down to who makes more threes or who just gets a stop or two on defense by the end of it.
I want to talk your coach in just a second, because obviously there is some drama there within the Big 12 heading to Indiana, Kansas State being a Big 12 team. That's something that I want to discuss, and I know you want to dive more into PJ Haggerty. Before we go to the break, though, who is, for people who are maybe Kansas State fans that haven't seen any Indiana basketball this year, who is the key player for the Hoosiers?
I think it's Lamar Wilkerson. I do. I think Lamar Wilkerson, he's your guy who's been playing the 2 so far this season, comes over from Sam Houston, a top 15 scorer in all of college basketball a year ago. The guy can literally shoot it from half court, and you're like, oh, that's probably a pretty good shot. He has that range. It's so incredible to watch. I want to see his handles and his ball skills be a little bit more aggressive, especially getting to the basket. But talk about a guy that can just turn it on in a heartbeat and get hot from downtown. It's Lamar Wilkerson. If you lose him, he will make you pay. And so that's the guy that makes this team go when he is scoring and also assisting, right? Indiana, one of the best assisting teams in the country at the moment. When he is on, Indiana is on. He's the one that leads those 95, 98, 100-point performances. He's got to get back going, has struggled the last couple of games. And so I look at Lamar Wilkerson, and I want to talk about Tucker DeVries on the other side, of course, the son of Darian Devries, and why that could be the matchup against PJ Haggerty, because there's no question. That dude's averaging, 28 points a game right now? That's unbelievable. And that's what Indiana has to worry about defensively. But Kansas State's got to worry about Lamar Wilkerson, who is an individual heater on his own.
Well, both Jerome Tang and Darian Devries did not make the NCAA tournament last year. That is something that is definitely hurts for a lot of fans, Big 12 fans especially, because of West Virginia being on the bubble last year, a completely different drama. But there's way much more drama that we need to talk about from the Big 12 to Indiana. And we're going to do that next, right here on this Locked On College Crossover. But first, Jacob, I think we got to say that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NBA, but we're college basketball, and we're going to dive into that one today. 8.5-point favorite. Indiana is favored, according to our friends at FanDuel. How you feeling about that?
I think it could be good. I think being at home gives you 5 or 6. I think both offenses, like we talked about, are electric. And I could see Indiana winning by 10 or 15. I could see Kansas State getting hot and winning by 10 or 15. Or I could see this being an absolute nail biter. I'm going to take the Hoosiers because they step it up defensively. I'll take Indiana to win and to cover the 8.5-point spread. What about you? Kansas State coming on the road to Assembly Hall. Can they keep it closer than that spread?
Well, if you like trends, then maybe you were prematurely giving that in favor of Indiana when being on the spread, because Kansas State is 5-2 against the spread in their last 7 games against Big Ten opponents. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I
Okay.
think they cover in this one. I think
Gotcha.
I'm with you. It could be a win, could be a loss. These games are going to be really close. Who's the most powerful 3-point shooter, I think is what happens. But I think they cover, all thanks to that nice trend. And right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, play your game with FanDuel. It is the official sports betting partner of the NBA. There's been some big drama over this past offseason that Indiana, was involved in this one. And
Yeah.
Darian Devries going as the new head coach of Indiana from West Virginia, a Big 12 school that Kansas State obviously got to see the front row seat of. There was a lot of stuff going down there. Just kind of, what was your insider view there as a host that covers this team day in and day out? What did you take from all of this?
It was so fascinating to watch the coaching search for Indiana, and can't wait to hear the Big 12 perspective on Darian Devries leaving the conference to go to the Big 10, because he was not the first choice. He wasn't the first option. That wasn't really a secret. There were some of the big names, right? We're seeing this right now in the college football landscape. You had the dream hires, right? You had the Brad Stevens hire. You had pulling bigger names from current schools and things like that. But DeVries was always kind of in the mix, but he was never really top priority, number one for the fans, and the guy that everybody wanted. But when some of the big names started to come off the board, or at least not become options anymore, DeVries started to get a little bit more popular. And when the hire was made, Christian, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't an overwhelming joy, I guess, by the fan base or a party or a celebration. It was, all right, yeah, I mean, sure, right? The guy was successful at Drake, only had 1 year at West Virginia. I'll say this too. Some people were not thrilled that he left his current school after just 1 year. Maybe that was sort of a bad sign, but here's the thing. When Indiana basketball comes calling, you don't say no. That's just how it is. And when you're a guy like DeVries, this is the biggest opportunity you've ever had. No disrespect to West Virginia. You've done many episodes with our buddy Mountaineer Paul. We had great conversations about this. Even he said West Virginia and Indiana are two different beasts on the basketball floor. When the Hoosiers come calling, you don't hang up the phone. And so that's what happened. And I think so far it's been good. But what was the Big 12 perspective in terms of a guy leaving that conference from basketball, which has really grown over the last several years, to come to the Big 10 in a place like Indiana?
It felt like there was a lot of speculation that maybe he was cashing it in at the end of the season, and that's why they became a bubble team to go on to Indiana and go on to, greener pastures, if you will, in Bloomington. That's what the overall perspective looked like, but I don't know if that's actually the case. Of course, I don't know that, but that's at least how it felt. I think it's a great addition. I think what we've seen so far already in the first 5 games, I mean, Indiana's already ranked this season. They're obviously making a huge step forward on the offensive abilities. As you mentioned, you're not snoozing while watching these games. 1985 basketball, I find that absolutely hilarious, by the way. Did they have 3-point lines back then? I mean, that's
well, the way they played a few years under Mike Woodson, they acted like they didn't. I mean, they were just, it's like it didn't even exist.
I love that. Yeah. So seeing him come in and make a huge impact, I think will be really exciting for sure. PJ Haggerty on the flip side for Kansas State,
Let's
I think
talk
is
about
going,
this dude, man.
he's going to cause havoc, man. He has been, I think he's playing with a chip on his shoulder. I'll be completely honest with you. There was ratings that came out. The Torvik ratings came out this offseason talking about the projected top 25 scorers in the country. His name was nowhere to be found. And he was finished 3rd in scoring last year. He transfers over from Memphis. He wants to do a lot of different things with his game to get NBA draft stock ready. And scoring wasn't the thing, according to him at Big 12 Media Days, wasn't the thing that he was going to be primarily focused on. He wanted to get other people involved, and that's not the case. He's leading the country in scoring. He is looking absolutely amazing, and I think you have to give him credit that maybe Indiana might be seeing potentially the player of the year in the country on Tuesday.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, is he's averaging 28 points a game, which you said is number 1 in the country, but he's a top 25 assist guy in college basketball, too, averaging over 6 assists per game. So he's doing his job in facilitating as a guard. And just from the games and the film I've been able to watch, he clearly has the ball in his hands more times than not. But if Indiana throws pressure at him, Christian, will he give it up? Will he bring it up the floor more times than not? Will he kind of be a spot up guy, a backdoor guy? creating guy. What happens if Indiana throws a lot of pressure at him, which I'm sure he's already seen this season?
Yeah, they've definitely seen that. I think double teams could be interesting, but because of all the other offensive weapons that Kansas State has brought in this year, I could see that being something that Indiana has no choice but to go away from, because it'll be really a tough struggle. If they are going to pressure him, it's got to be immediate. Above the 3-point line, they're going to have to maybe even cause some traps, in my opinion, because he drives the lane like no other. He threads the needle in these lanes, finds ways to draw fouls. I believe it might have been different, but a couple games ago, there was a stat that I looked up, and he was averaging 8 fouls a game from the opponent from drawing 8 fouls a game. That's insane. That's a game-changing type player on both sides of the basketball. So if you're going to push that kind of pressure, then you have to do it early. And I think you have to find a way to do it right when they cross half court. Is that possible? I'm sure Kansas State's going to be planning for it.
Yeah, I was looking to see what he's shooting in terms of free throws right now. And it says, he's averaging right now at Kansas State, PJ Haggerty, averaging almost 8 makes per game on 9 attempts per game. Like those are just free points for a guy like him. And look, I'll admit, Indiana has had an early problem this season defending with fouling. We talk about all the time, can you defend without fouling? Indiana has had some issues where the bigs have gotten in foul trouble, the guards have gotten in foul trouble. Just thinking out loud here, I think Tayton Connerway is going to be the guy that guards him. He's got the similar size, 6'3", 190 pounds is Tayton Connerway. I know that's similar to PJ Haggerty. So I think Connerway is going to be the guy on him, but don't be surprised if you see someone like a Tucker DeVries who plays the big guard, small forward spot, who is 6'7". Not that he is athletic as Haggerty, but just has the size. But for me, man, it's staying out of foul trouble against this Kansas State team. And if you do throw, the double at Haggerty or throw your best defender on him, I think Kansas State has more scorers than him. He just overhypes, or I guess, he basically overshadows. That's the word I was looking for. He overshadows everybody because he scored 28 points a game.
Yeah, Nate Johnson, another great shooter on this team. He was the MAC Player of the Year and the MAC Defensive Player of the Year last year, coming over to Kansas State. He's done a really good job. His first game at Kansas State, he was 1 rebound shy of a triple-double. Kansas State's never had a triple-double in the program history, and he just missed it. So a lot of good things to say from him as well. And, of course, Abdi Bashir Jr., Jerome Tang believes that he's the best shooter in the country, and he shoots threes lights out. So I think there are a couple other shooters on this team for sure. But notice I mentioned a lot of guards. The front court is something that I'm a little bit nervous about. They've struggled with rebounding all season long so far. They've got better than last year, but it's still a struggle, and you don't get a lot of points down low from this Kansas State team. If for some reason this team struggles to shoot beyond the arc or struggle to just really have a bad shooting night whatsoever, Indiana could run this one away really fast.
But it's fascinating because that's where Indiana's weakness is the front court. It's under the basket. It's the big guys, because you have Reed Bailey coming over from Davidson, and you have Sam Alexis from Florida. And Sam Alexis has been a really big surprise. He didn't hardly ever play on that Florida team that won a national title. Reed Bailey was expected to be the dude, and I think he still is. But that's pretty much all you have in terms of your size. And they're good, but they're not great yet. And rebounding is a problem. Lyndon Wood out-rebounded Indiana the other night.
Wow.
That's not really good. That's not a good sign, especially when you're coming into these big games against P4, P5 teams like Kansas State, Louisville, Kentucky still on that schedule too. So we're talking about 2 very similar teams here, Christian. Teams that struggle to rebound the basketball. They love to run the floor, and the first shot they look for is from the outside. This could be a lot of fun, or it could be one of the ugliest games we've seen all year if both teams can't find a rhythm inside Assembly Hall tonight.
This is going to be a really fun game to check out. Let's talk keys to victory. Let's talk some last-minute thoughts and maybe even a score prediction. Let's do that to finish up this show on this Locked On College Crossover. Kansas State and Indiana take on in a non-conference matchup tonight. It's going to be a really good one. I'm excited for it. Jacob Goins right here, Christian Rauh, this Locked On College Crossover. And we've got to the point that this is a very very similar matchup between these two teams. If you had to give some keys to victory, I'll give you two and I'll take two. You go first. What would you say that you want to see from Indiana in tonight's game to prove that this team is not only an AP top 25 team, but can have a nice check in the box as a resume builder for the season to come?
I want to first see the defense continue to play well. The offense has not been good the last two games, but the defense has ramped up, and I think that's what Indiana has to do, because the best team you've played so far is Marquette, and that was in game 2 of the year, where defense didn't have to be great because you scored 100 points in downtown Chicago. So I want to see Indiana play well defensively, communicate defensively, and not lose shooters. They've done a good job of that so far. But against a Kansas State team that moves the ball well and looks for their open guys, Indiana can't lose dudes on the perimeter. So I first want to see that. And then I want to see Indiana move the ball themselves. I said Indiana's one of the best passing teams in the country. It's true. They love to pass the basketball and find the good shot, the better shot, or the best shot. And that's what makes this team so good. And that's what gets the offense going. But I also like to see it work from the inside out a little bit. Get guys like Sam Alexis and Reed Bailey some work at the high elbow. Get guys driving downhill and have the defense collapse and then kick it out for threes. If Indiana's moving the basketball, and they also move really well without the basketball, if those things happen tonight in this game, I think Indiana can win and probably win comfortably. But I'll flip this to you. As Kansas State, we mentioned, 8.5-point dog on the road in Assembly Hall, one of the greatest atmospheres in college basketball. What do they have to do tonight, the Wildcats, that is, to try to pull off the upset?
Yeah, the atmosphere is going to be one of the biggest things, right? I wonder if they're going to be able to handle it. This is a brand new team altogether. Now, there's a lot of veteran players on it with PJ Haggerty, Nate Johnson playing in different areas with tournament experience, but they haven't had a true road test or just a true test all season long so far. Their biggest road trip is to the T-Mobile Center in Kansas City. So I do think this is going to be a really big test for them, and that is something that I think the atmosphere will be huge, because one of the best basketball atmospheres in college basketball. I know you were speaking right off the air and you said, yeah, if they're winning, it's one of the best basketball atmosphere.
Yes, when it's good, it's good. There's no doubt. Yeah.
But I will say one of the biggest key takeaways is the rebounding. I mentioned that the front court has struggled. If they can win this rebounding battle, which sounds like it's possible against this Indiana team, and they can focus on maybe getting some second chance buckets, then I like their shots there, because if the shooting game goes bad, if they have some rough beginnings from an Abdi Bashir shooting his threes, it doesn't go in, or PJ Haggerty doesn't get those calls from drawing the fouls and getting to the free throw line, they're going to have to utilize those second chance points. I think that's my biggest key takeaway. But if for some reason Kansas State gets a good lead, and we've seen this happen a couple times this season, if they get some sort of lead towards the end of the game, they have struggled to close out games. They were leading by Cal at halftime, like 60-34 or something like that. They wound up winning by 3 when the game was over, and both teams scored in the 90s. They had a terrible second half. Same thing happened a couple other games this season. If they get ahead, they need to find a way to stay ahead, not just coast. They need to keep their foot on the pedal, and they have to close the game out. So those are my 2 keys to victory. If Kansas State is going to pull this upset off, because it is an upset, according to our friends at FanDuel, 8.5-point favorite for the Hoosiers. And I think rebounding's the key, and closing it if they can finally get it done. Prediction-wise, I'm going to go and say that they cover the spread, but because it's their first away game of the season, I think Indiana gets the win.
Okay. Yeah, I like Indiana to win and pull away probably in the last 10 to 12 minutes. I think the first half will be really close. I think Kansas State could even be winning at the half, but Indiana finds their footing in the early second half. We talk so much in basketball, last 4, first 4, right? The last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half. If Indiana can win that, continue to put pressure defensively, especially in some full court and some trapping things, make Kansas State uncomfortable with the basketball in their hands, force turnovers, and get some points off of those, I think Indiana can use the crowd to their advantage. 8.5 isn't terrible. I like Indiana to win. I like Indiana to cover. I'll say something like 94, 94-82, somewhere in there. I think both teams will score, but I think Indiana at home is just a little too much. But I want to ask you one thing before we go. You've talked about this being the biggest game in non-con play for Kansas State. It is a top 25 game, or a top 25 team in Indiana. It's on the road at Assembly Hall. what does a win like this do? What does this do for the rest of non-con play? And then heading into what is a brutal Big 12 team or a Big 12 schedule because, BYU and Arizona exist. So what would this win do for Kansas State this early in the season?
Yeah, and BYU's our Big 12 opener, and Arizona's not too far behind on that as well. So it's a very tough, it's a gauntlet of a Big 12 schedule for Kansas State this year. I mean, your only godsend is that you only play Houston once. It's on Valentine's Day, so maybe they'll be sweethearts. Who knows?
Yeah.
But either way, for the record, 96-90 is my score prediction for this one.
Okay.
I think they cover the spread, but I think it's still pretty good. I think if they cover the spread, if they only lose by 6 points, or even if it's just close to this spread, it's going to be seen as a quad one loss because Indiana's going to be up in that box. And I think it's going to be good for a tournament resume. I don't think it's going to hurt you as much as it's going to, it's going to help your stock. I think it's obviously a win would be gigantic, but when you're trying to get back to the NCAA tournament, something that Jerome Tang hasn't done for 3 seasons now, the last time he made it is when they had that Elite 8 run just a few years ago. He hasn't made it the last 2 seasons. Now you're heading into year 3. That's tournament or bust is the big thing for Kansas State this year. Even if it means you're playing in Dayton in the first 4, you got to find a way to get there. A win like this, or even a close loss, I think would be huge for the tournament resume.
I think so. I mean, I was just looking at the schedule. I mean, you just forget about all the teams in the Big 12 where you're trying to pick up wins. It's Iowa State, it's Kansas, Houston, Arizona, BYU. I mean, those games are brutal. And I think the Big 12 and the Big 10 are very comparable in what those conferences are going to be. And then you throw in the SEC as well. I mean, those 3 in the Big East too. I love that conference of basketball. I mean, man, the sport we're watching right now is truly incredible. These 2 teams are top 50 in KenPom right now, Indiana and Kansas State. And so it's a big game regardless. It's a big win for either side. And man, I'm really looking forward to this one tonight as Kansas State visits Indiana inside of Assembly Hall.
Are you still going to be excited if Kansas State gets the upset? It's going to be a tough one if it happens.
Maybe not as excited. I may be a little disappointed in that one, but it depends on how it happens, I guess. I mean, if Kansas State comes in and just shoots the absolute lights out and they're hitting tough shots and fall away threes with hands in their face and they just can't miss as a team, then it is what it is. The idea for Indiana, though, is it as simple as make somebody else beat you? Don't let PJ Haggerty drop a 30 bomb in the hall. I mean, is it really that simple as just make somebody else beat you? I don't know. I think it would depend on how it happens, Christian. But if Indiana just gets run out of their own gym and looks horrible defensively, I may feel a little bit different about it.
I think you just read my mind as you were closing out this show here, because I was about to say, you want to hear a bold take? Even though I think Kansas State falls in this game, PJ Haggerty's going to drop a double-double, and that's going to mean 30 points as well.
Man, I hope not, but it absolutely could happen. The dude is an absolute baller.
Let's get out of here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Check out Locked On Hoosiers. Check out Locked On Kansas State, wherever you're listening to your podcast. We always got something covered for you, and I'm sure we're going to have a reaction for you right after the game. Thanks for listening to this Locked On College Crossover.